In the Toronto Sun, Monte Solberg has declared that the people who are complaining about the robocalls that interfere with our democracy are coming from left-wing newspapers owned by Americans, and it's foreign interference, and then it's all manufactured by the Avaz and Lead Now leftist organizations. His complaint is that people are using online forms to file complaints to Elections Canada. He doesn't like that it's an online form, a form letter that people are sending to make this complaint. He says people should do it in their own words. They should say it in their own words. Perhaps Mr. Solberg believes that people should write a 500-word essay to make a complaint that robocalls are being made and that democracy was being interfered with, and not just the fact that you're upset that it's happening and that you would like Elections Canada to look into it. To add insult to injury, he has juxtaposed this to liking something on Facebook, to trivialize the complaints that Canadians have over the theft of our democracy, to liking something on Facebook as a simple trend. This is insulting. He then proceeded to suggest maybe if people like it this way that they should just vote by clicking like on Facebook. Well, Mr. Solberg, we saw what happened in 2004 with electronic voting in the United States, and I do not care to have that here. Unless, of course, that's what you're going for. After all, robo-votes are a lot more reliable than robo-calls. They're a lot more efficient to just outright alter the votes rather than trying to mess up people and not being able to vote right. Is that what you're going for? After it is, conservatives always talk about efficiency. He then goes on to repeat his complaint that you have to fill it out in your own words, your complaint about the robocalls and that democracy was interfered with. Just saying it is not enough. Apparently he feels that it has to be the 500-word essay in your own words why you think this should be looked into. This is not school. This is democracy. Perhaps Mr. Solberg believes that we should all be professional writers to have to file a complaint with Elections Canada over this. Perhaps maybe he thinks only professionals should be allowed to make these complaints. Interestingly, he goes on to complain that, well, the lefties in the French Revolution actually really stood up and were ready to risk their lives for democracy. Then goes on to belittle those who complain now, how they're supposedly only willing to fill out a form, completely ignoring all the people that go to protests. Apparently, in his view, the only people that have a right to complain about democracy are those willing to risk their lives or use violence against the state. Mr. Solberg, you wouldn't happen to be advocating violence against the state, would you? Because it sounds like you think people should really be using that if they have a problem with their election being stolen by robocalls. I love his line that he uses later on. Real democracy involves things like ideas and debate. And, voting. That's a strange comment from someone who just a few paragraphs before was complaining that people were talking and that people were discussing. This is also very strange coming from a man who writes for a paper that's trying to silence people who are actively trying to engage in debate about this, who are trying to speak up, and then relegates their comments or their concerns to being a like click on a Facebook, rather than the real legitimate concerns that Canadians have over the theft of our election. I know that's a very typical thing for the Sun. Shout down anyone who would dare question the validity of our election when there was clearly misconduct involved. And anyone that's too loud that the Sun can't shout down, ridicules. So it's strange for you to complain that people aren't talking, or aren't talking in the way that you would prefer that they are talking, and then ridicule them when they do, and shout them down when their voice is weak enough. And as for that little piece at the end, and voting, that's what caused this entire situation. People voting, and the voting system being rigged. The voting system being interfered with. That's what people are making so much noise about. That's what people are complaining about. The complaints that you are trying to silence and paint is illegitimate. People have a right to investigate their elections if there's something wrong with them. Apparently, You do not believe so.